One of the best stretches of Iowa Hawkeyes football recruiting continues, and we will review with the latest edition coming on Tuesday right here at Hawkeyes Live. Please lock it in for the next hour. Bring those comments and questions as you typically do. We will get to them, and of course, bring a friend or two with you and hit the like button before you get settled for Hawkeyes football coverage right here at the Voice of College Football, featuring our guy, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Get on over there and check out Corey's work from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey, how you doing today?
Doing good. Great evening yesterday. And we'll get to it. I know the Kendrick Raphael news kind of caught me by surprise. I'm certainly less involved with the Iowa recruiting beat as opposed to some people with Rivals, 247, etc. But great news because there had been some negativity. I don't want to say that I love when people. I'm not ripping anybody for it, but whenever Iowa misses on a recruit, I tweet it out. Just they've missed on this guy. And I think some people sometimes interpret that I'm trying to, rip Ferentz. That's not what it is. It's just fact. They missed on some guys. Kai Black from Urbandale, they missed on him. He's a wide receiver committed to ISU about a week ago. And then just the other day, they missed on Jamison Patton, who's a safety defensive back from Ankeny. Played with J.J. Cole, who's also an Iowa State. I believe he's committed to Iowa State quarterback, but Iowa was in on him as well. And then they took Marco Lainez, and I think that was sort of the writing on the wall for Cole. But anyways, I just thought it was some positive momentum for Iowa State over the past couple of weeks. And so for Iowa to get a kid from Florida, four-star running back who was liked by a lot of schools, offered by a lot of schools, and schools that we should actually be happy offered him, if that makes sense. Like, you can talk about all these big names offering these kids, but specifically the schools that offered Raphael, to me, is a good sign, because they're schools that traditionally, at least in recent years, have evaluated running back talent at a high level, have produced NFL backs. And so that's a good sign. Liddell Betts is working his tail off right now. And he's quickly becoming my favorite assistant, minus Phil Parker. And I know everybody loves LeVar Woods. I like LeVar as well. But boy, we're talking 22 and 23. Iowa's nabbed Jazian Patterson from Deerfield Beach, Florida, who was at one time a 4-star. I know he dropped to 3-star status, I think, by Rivals and 247. My understanding is that his high school had a coaching staff change, and it just kind of derailed that season, hurt his stock. He'd already committed. And then Caleb Johnson, who started out as a 3-star, moved up to 4-star status. Those guys are both now on campus. And now you add, and he was from Ohio, but now you add Kendrick Raphael. So 2 running backs from the state of Florida in 2 years, both of which, again, Patterson's not currently a 4-star, but when they committed, were 4-stars kids. And I'm positive about recruiting right now. I said it on a video I published on my channel earlier in the day. They've struggled a bit at tight end. Mac Markway is one that stands out. They lost another target today, committed to Miami. And they've struggled a bit at receiver. Now, they do have Alex Mota coming in, Iowa kid, but we know they lost on Kyler Casper, and they lost on Kai Black from Urbandale. But I think Iowa fans should be positive, because the quality of quarterbacks, and I'm specifically talking about Lainez. I know that Carson May's a 4-star kid. We'll see what he can do. Hopefully, we'll get to see what he can do. But the type of quarterback and the type of running back for these next couple of seasons is what encourages me. Because not only are these kids highly recruited, but their skill set is different than what we've been accustomed to under Kirk Ferentz. And so that's why I'm positive. You're talking about a 23 class with Marco Lainez and now Kendrick Raphael. That's a pretty cool tandem. And so we'll see where it plays out. But this is, I think, according to most sites, this is the highest rated commit for Iowa's 23 class thus far. So, boy, it's great news when you can steal one from Florida. And certainly Liddell Betts, maybe even the hiring of Abdul Hodge. He's got some strong connections down there, but I think Liddell deserves a lot of the credit here. And we've seen that for the 22 and 23 classes.
Kendrick Raphael, coming out of Naples High School in Naples, Florida, ran for 1,374 yards last year, 10.9 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns on the ground, another one receiving on a couple receptions. And he's the 64th rated player in the state of Florida, 22nd running back. And there you see his national ranking in the 247 Sports Composite. So two things come to mind for me when talking about the why of Iowa's upgraded recruiting over the past, 3 to 4 cycles, something in that range?
Yeah. 21, I think, was really I'd have to look back at 20, but 21 is what it felt like. And that, they've carried that through 23 and it appears 24 now.
So going back to 2015, whether you want to make 2015 through 21, the 7-year stretch of records there, or maybe you go 2019, 2021, that strong 3 years of the best records that I was posted in a collection of seasons going back to the early 2000s. That could be one reason why. Just winning breeds quality players wanting to go to that school. The other one would be possibly some of the coaching changes, the new additions to the coaching staff, and those guys really being on top of it.
Yeah, and I think individually, I mean, you look at these recruits individually, you can point directly to coaching staff changes. Leighton Jones is a future center. He told me during an interview that George Barnett was a big reason why he committed to Iowa. So there's another example. Now, I'm not saying he wouldn't have gotten recruited. Maybe he would have committed if it was still Tim Polasek. I know that George Barnett coaches completely in a different fashion than, say, a Tim Polasek did or does. So you're right. I think from what I know, I don't know a ton about George Barnett, but I think the players really respect him. It sounds like he knows how to motivate his players. And Liddell Betts, I know less about him from an on-field coaching perspective, but from a recruiting perspective, the results are obvious. And I will say this, the Marco Lainez thing, we're going to talk more about him, I know, in the coming months and year, Mark, because he's not here till 23. But I just spoke with him over the weekend, and we'll be publishing a podcast, which I think people will enjoy, because I think I'd like to think it's the quarterback of the future for Iowa. But that class I'm more excited about that class because now of that tandem, Lainez and Raphael, than I have been. The 22 class, everybody talked about how good it was at defense. It was just collectively really good, and everybody got excited about it because Xavier Wampa. 21 was more of an offensive line focused class with Connor Colby and David Cobb and Michael Myslinski and Jennings Dunker. So they've done a good job sort of being able to transition into, okay, now we got to start recruiting and getting these skill position players. What's ironic about it is that they've struggled a bit at tight end. And this may be, you could argue, tight end university. You could argue that. And yet it seems like they're kind of struggling to get big tight end. Now, maybe that's okay. Mark, maybe that's okay because maybe the focus needs to be on these positions that they're not as good at developing. Because let's be honest, they've developed guys that weren't recruited real highly. Now, Tony Moyaki was recruited at a pretty high level. I'd have to run through all these guys, but I don't think Noah Fant, I know he's a defensive end in Nebraska coming out of high school. I don't think he was real highly recruited. George Kittle, don't think he was highly recruited. I remember him looking at his, you look up his George Kittle's recruiting profile. He looks like he should be in 6th grade. All right. And now he looks like he's a WWE wrestler. So Iowa, could the argument be made, Mark, that Iowa is collectively the best developmental school in the country? Could that argument be made given the fact that Iowa does not typically recruit at a high level, and you look at the amount of NFL talent we've looked at the numbers of Iowa players in the NFL, and you've got the top 5 to 6 schools are like the powers, right? The Alabamas, the Clemson, the Ohio State, and then Iowa's just stuck there. So could that argument be made?
It can be once you take it to that degree, because for me, the first level is to determine, okay, what are the recruiting rankings versus the winning on the field? Right. And I would put Wisconsin and Iowa step for step there, where they're turning top 30 to 35 classes, something in that range, into top 15 roughly teams in the country on a fairly regular basis. But then when you take that next step, toward NFL development. Iowa's outranking Wisconsin. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I know that they are. So those are the two programs that come to mind. Mark D'Antonio during the first half of his tenure at Michigan State, but of course he's not there. We'll see what Mel Tucker does, but they really took advantage of and developed and outplayed their talent. Stanford did for a number of years under Jim Harbaugh, then David Shaw, but they've leveled off considerably. But right now, yeah.
How about Iowa State? I mean, Iowa State, you could argue is
yes,
but you saw and I knew this stat prior to retweeting it, but I saw that stat today. You probably saw it as well. Iowa State is one of just 3 schools, Power 5 schools in the country that have not won 10 games in the season. So all those cyclones that come on here to try. I mean, like
Freudian slip there.
Freudian slip. That is an astounding. And I'm not just trying to. Well, I am trolling, but that is an astounding data point. Now it's also astounding that Indiana has never won 10 games. So it's Iowa State, Indiana, and Vanderbilt, I believe. No, Vanderbilt, that doesn't surprise anybody. But Iowa State and Indiana is a surprise. Now, I think if that 2020 season had gone full length, Iowa State and Indiana may have won 10 games that year. I think that's fair to say, right? But the fact of the matter is it was condensed and it was shortened for a reason, and that may have been part of the reason they won a lot. So anyways, the point is Iowa's doing well right now with recruiting in a couple positions they don't typically recruit. They haven't done badly at running back, but I keep saying this, like, I've kind of grown old, and I really enjoyed watching Tyler Goodson. I enjoyed watching Akram Wadley at times, LaShawn Daniels, those, Torrin Young, those types of backs. But the whole lightning thunder thing, I kind of get tired of that. I don't really think that really is my opinion. That's not really the way to go. I'm no rushing expert, but to me, I look at the most successful backfields, and you're looking at Michigan State's produced, the likes of Le'Veon Bell and Kenneth Walker, and Wisconsin's had Monty Ball and Melvin Gordon, and Braylon Allen's kind of like a Derrick Henry. He's kind of a freak, but for the most part, you have these guys that can do it all, and you wouldn't necessarily say they're just unbelievable at one aspect, but they're just kind of that tweener, well-polished back. And I think Iowa now, again, we're evaluating high school footage that's edited, so I get that we have to wait and see. But just comparing previous commitments, even a guy like Tyler Goodson, who I like Tyler a lot, but he was a bit one-dimensional. But he was a pretty highly touted running back. The guys they have coming in, Patterson, Caleb Johnson, Kendrick Raphael, those guys I think can look like that tweener type of back that Iowa's been missing. And they've been close. It's not like Iowa hasn't tried to get them in the past before Liddell Betts got here. They were real close on Melvin Gordon. They were real close. They had Eno Benjamin committed. So they've been close, but now they seem to be, now these guys got to sign. The 2 of them are obviously on campus already, but they got to hang on to Raphael. But they're getting these kids now, and I give Liddell Betts a lot of credit for that.
Multiple Nebraska fans in the live chat making themselves known. We've got our guy Cole and Adam, and they're being questioned for their presence right here. We don't question here at the Voice of College Football. We're looking for, of course, Iowa fans first and foremost, but college football fans across the board. So Iowa fans, what you can do is you can join us on our Nebraska show, which starts at 6 Central on our Nebraska channel. Lemansky, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that. Any Hawkeye journalist living in Ames is a messenger of integrity. Good work, Corey, this offseason.
How about that? Messenger of integrity. And he put a $5 down. How about that, Mark? That's a generous Lemansky. Appreciate that, Lemansky. That's always enjoy those compliments. And I do see the comment from Oink Oink in the chat. Yes, Sean Green is an exception. I mean, he was the example of that, right? He was a bull, but he could also jump cut. He could kind of do it all. And so he's the exception. But they really haven't had back. Who else would you say was I think Ivory Kelly Martin was built like that. I don't, but see, he had problems with ball security, and he was an average Big Ten back. So maybe, we don't know these guys will pan out, but you're right. Sean Green has, not saying Kirk's never landed them. Ladell Betts was pretty good back in the day, right? I mean, he was probably him and Sean were the most successful NFL backs under Kirk.
Wow. Every time you throw out another name, takes me back.
Marcus Coker, I see the comment, Andy. Yeah. Marcus Coker, yes, he had the one huge year. And he kind of is a forgotten guy. Had injuries not caught up to him. Yeah, he had the huge Insight Bowl. I can't remember how many yards he had in the Insight Bowl. And he was sort of like a Braylon Allen in a way. He's kind of what I hope that Caleb Johnson can develop into. I will say this: there's not a running, and I had this conversation the other day with Coach Patterson. There's not a running back in the NFL that I would rather have than Derrick Henry. There's just not. Like, look at Derrick Henry's numbers. You can say he's one-dimensional. He's not a great pass catcher. You watch him out of the backfield. We know he's a truck, but you look at his numbers. Like, his numbers go from he's averaging 3.5 yards per carry in the first quarter, and then it's 4.2 in the second quarter. And by the fourth quarter, he's averaging over 5 yards per carry. I mean, he wears defenses down. Now, I'm not saying everybody's a freak like Derrick Henry, but there is not a back in the league that I would rather have than Derrick Henry. And so Braylon Allen scares me, and I have hopes that Caleb Johnson. But see, Caleb Johnson is like Braylon Allen in that he is not just a bulldozer. He's not Jerome Bettis, and Jerome Bettis was great, but he's got the moves. Again, we'll see if he can. Vision's a big part of this. That changes when you get to the college level, but running back is known to be the easiest position to play as a freshman, and so Iowa, we may see a glimpse of these guys, Patterson and/or Caleb Johnson, here in 2022.
We'll respond and clean up some of the numbers, and then I've got a point to kind of clarify with Corey here. So Andy T, 259 in yardage for Marcus Coker against Mizzou in the Insight Bowl. That figure was actually 219. It was 33 carries for a 219 spot, 2 touchdowns against Mizzou. And then he parlayed that into the huge 2011 season with over 1,300 yards and had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 100-yard games, including 252 at Minnesota.
Yeah, boy, it would have been something to see him, what he could have became, or what he could have become, whatever the proper grammar is there, because he did have the body of an NFL back. But yeah, that's a tough thing too. We talk about injuries. Not only can they derail a career, they can derail a season. We've had Iowa. How many years of Iowa football have been sort of derailed because of running back injuries? And Andy brings up Brandon Wager. I was never that impressed with Brandon Wager. I mean, the 2009 was a tough year running the football, even though they won a lot of games. Adam Robinson and Brandon Wager were young, talented guys. So who knows what Wager would have done? Now, he did go to the NFL, played for the Panthers for a while. I believe he transferred down to Oklahoma, and he got bigger. I mean, his body changed as he progressed. Now, maybe he would have done that at Iowa. Again, they've been close on some of these guys. I mentioned the guys they didn't get in recruiting. We had Wager, who transferred out. Adam Robinson's another one who, his story was kind of sad as well. How his fallout with Iowa, and so. But now the nice thing is you're not relying on one or two guys. You've got a bank of guys that I feel pretty good about. I was really excited about Jazzy Patterson. He's kind of that guy that doesn't get talked about because, again, his status kind of slipped down a bit as his team struggled at Deerfield last year. But to me, he's about the same size as Sean Green coming out of high school. Now, maybe he won't Sean Green got really big. But who knows? These guys can pack on some weight. They're there now. Strength and conditioning will start, and they may be ready this fall.
So again, to take us back to the thunder and lightning analogy, which gets overplayed, but still, you're setting this up as there being a committee approach here in 2022, but you would rather have a guy. You don't like alternating backs, going with a hot hand, one a speed guy, one a power guy.
Well, I'm looking at it through my narrow lens, and I'm looking at, and I know they run different schemes, right? You got a zone scheme, you got a gap scheme, but I look at Wisconsin, and yeah, you're never going to play one. No guy's going to run for 35 carries every game. That's obviously not going to happen. But Wisconsin's typically got a feature back. Iowa did last year, and they have at times, but oftentimes they try the whole. I don't think that they trying it because they think that's better. I just think they've missed on some recruits, and we mentioned guys like Wager who leave, and Robinson who had his thing, and whatnot. Joel Hampton got hurt. I mean, these are some guys that had an opportunity to be really good. I just look at the two teams, and it's night and day. Obviously, success on the ground at Wisconsin has been far better. Now they've also had better offensive lines, so there's multiple variables that play into this. But I would rather a feature back. When we're talking about this year, and as far as a committee is concerned, yeah, you want multiple guys who can run the ball. I would love to think that a guy like Caleb Johnson or Patterson can emerge as a feature back this year, but I think it's a bit much to ask for a freshman, and I just don't know enough about LaShawn Williams and Gavin Williams to say at this point. And yeah, they were good against Kentucky, but as we've talked about, one game against a defense that wasn't completely healthy, that's not going to change my mindset heading into 2022. To me, let's just play fall camp. Should be fun. Running back might be the best battle in fall camp. I'd like to think it'd be quarterback. But if the battle goes anything like it did in the spring, I don't think it's going to be that interesting. Running back should be a very, very interesting battle along with the offensive line, just to see who comes out on top. Do you disagree with that assessment, Mark? Do you prefer having that that running back by committee approach, the thunder and lightning and these different style of backs?
Well, when we go committee, there are very few programs in the country that can go 3 and 4 deep. Alabama's been able to do that at times where they had 4 NFL running backs, eventually NFL running backs at the same time. So when we say committee, I'm thinking a long line, but typically 2 guys that can play off of each other with separate skill sets. And when you think of how difficult that is, not to scheme against as a defense, but to physically respond to as a defender. Let's say you're a linebacker, you're a safety, and yes, you can consciously determine, okay, this dude's in the game and we watch tape on him and he's the power guy versus, okay, the guy that just left, he's the speed guy. But to translate that from your mental ascension of that to, I'm going to be able to respond in the open field to a guy that can cut and go when I haven't seen that for a couple drives because I've had to deal with a guy that stuck his helmet in my chest. I think there's something to that. And obviously the freshness of, and I don't see it as an either or. There's a lot to be analyzed there about approach and subtle tendencies and strengths and weaknesses. It's not all just this guy's powerful, this guy's fast. There's more to it than that, and what you're trying to accomplish. And then, that fine line between kind of lathering up a running back and having him be just loose and ready and in the flow of the game and feeling good and in a rhythm versus he's getting worn down. Derrick Henry wears down the defense. Other guys wear down the defense. I think other guys, though, get worn down by the defense and maybe too many reps and aren't fresh. So that's where the coaching expertise in evaluating players and their abilities and the game situation come into play.
And I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is that there's multiple ways to skin a cat. You know? I mean, I think that's clear. And if you look at the NFL numbers, I just pulled that up as you were talking. You should be one that knows what a successful rushing offense looks like, because the Philadelphia Eagles led the league in yards per game, and you're a big Eagles fan, correct?
Me?
Yeah, right? You're not? Are you not? You're not a big Eagles fan?
Eagles? Where did that come from?
Wow. What? Who do you root for?
I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan.
No.
So I hated the Eagles.
So you hate the Eagles?
Well, no. I hated the Eagles when I was a big Cowboys fan.
You're not an Eagles fan, is what we're saying. You're not.
No, I've never been an Eagles fan.
Well, who was I thinking of?
Yes, the Cowboys. I grew up as a huge, enormous. My son's name is Landry.
Okay.
That's how big of a Cowboys fan I was growing up. Now I'm technically a Browns fan, but do I
Okay.
really
Well,
care? No, I don't. I
they were
don't
fourth
care
in the
that
league.
much.
They were fourth in the league last year in rushing yards per game.
Nick Chubb.
Baltimore was, or excuse me, Cleveland was. Yeah, Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
Now, I'm certainly no expert on NFL backfields, but I believe Duke Johnson also took some carries from Chubb, right? And Chubb actually missed some time this past year, if I'm not mistaken.
Duke Johnson back with the Browns.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. See, this conversation is going to go AWOL very quickly if we
He was
start.
there for a while, and he then went to the Texans. I don't know if he came back to the Browns.
Who else? The kid from Kansas City. Somebody tell me who we're talking about. The guy that had the domestic charge for the Chiefs, and then Cleveland picked him up
from Toledo.
Yeah, somebody will throw it up in the chat.
He went
here.
to Toledo. Oh my word! Yeah, had a big couple of years with the Chiefs. People,
yes,
come in. He went to Toledo.
Kareem Hunt. There it is.
Kareem Hunt. And then they also had a back who had a huge game on a Monday night or a Thursday night.
You're right.
I'll have to look him up as well against, I think, the Ravens this year. They came out of nowhere.
So, but Philadelphia is first in the league in rushing yards per game.
That's also Jalen Hurts.
You're right. And then Indy is second, and that's Jonathan Taylor. All right.
Yeah. Sure.
That's Jonathan Taylor. Baltimore would be J.K. Dobbins. Well, did he miss time this past year?
Yeah.
So, so I guess again, but you look, Tennessee's 5 on the list. San Francisco 7, Buffalo 6. Dallas, Seattle, New England are all close. So, I mean, but it's hard to also measure this because you got to factor in which guys were hurt. It seems like Christian McCaffrey's hurt every single year. But anyways, my point is there are multiple ways to skin a cat, and I do like the fact that Iowa is trying something different. They're not going to change this whole zone blocking scheme as long as Kirk Ferentz is here. I know some fans want that to change. Not that I don't think the average fan is probably not a real expert as far as what's the better approach to the running game. I certainly would like to think that Kirk Ferentz isn't so stubborn that he wouldn't change something in his line of. I mean, it's his line of work. He's an offensive line coach. You'd think if he thought that this was the problem, the blocking scheme, that it would be changed, because it doesn't look good when you have your head coach as the offensive line, an offensive line guru, and you can't run the football. And that's, for the most part, Iowa has not ran the football well under Kirk Ferentz year in and year out for the most part. So I think I have hopes that can change because of personnel. And as I mentioned, 21, Iowa recruited very well at the offensive line spot. So you hope those guys can really jump ahead. Connor Colby, you want him to take a big jump. David Davidkov, can he establish himself this year? It's year 2 for him. So, and then they have guys like Justin Britt and, they've lost a couple guys, Justin Britt and, who am I trying to think of? Mason Richmond. Jack Plum is an old guy. They have those guys too. So we'll see. I mean, like I say, that may be the one position this year that we see become a factor as far as true freshmen is concerned, not being special teams. You're going to see true freshmen play on special teams at times, but I think those guys could actually play offensive snaps.
2 other blasts from the past before we move on. Andy's mentioning Mark Wiseman. Man, you rattled off probably 10 or 12 running backs, Corey, and then there were a couple other ones in the chat, and I thought, my goodness, yeah, I know all these guys, remember all these guys, but I haven't thought about them for years. Mark Wiseman, yes.
Okay, but listen, no offense to Mark Wiseman. Unless I knew he was on the support staff, I don't know if he is still. That is not what I mean as a workhorse. Okay, so he was a workhorse. There's no question about it. He had no help. All right, and let's see, did he start in 2012 or 2013?
He had significant carries in all 3 years, 12, 13, and 14.
Incredible. It's incredible. And he was incredible, but he's not what you No, he's not what you envision.
You don't want 3.8 yards per carry out of your running back.
That's not a very good number. And just the way he's built, he is not a tweener back. He is the epitome of thunder, right? I mean,
he reminds me of the current Purdue running back, Horvath.
Xander
Horvath.
And I was just thinking, ironically enough, 16
touchdowns his third season.
Yeah, no, I mean he carried Iowa when they had no other options. Isn't Air Force's logo a lightning bolt, Mark? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
But they're the Falcons, right?
They are the Falcons.
And yet they have a lightning bolt as their. The reason I bring that up is because he's the epitome of thunder, but he transferred in from a team with logo that's lightning. That's where that's how you're getting an insight how my mind works. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, let's not delve any deeper.
Let me just say one more thing before we move on from the Raphael discussion, and I'll throw this, if you don't mind. I'm going to throw this banner up because this is what I mean by looking. And I brought this up in the video earlier today. When you look at the schools that offered Raphael, this is what excites me about it. So these are 4 of the schools: Boston College, Indiana, Iowa State, Minnesota. Boston College, and I know some of these coaching staffs have changed somewhat, and they have to really dig to figure out how much they've changed. But Boston College produced a really good NFL back in A.J. Dillon, who's co-starring up in Green Bay right now. Indiana's produced the likes of Jordan Howard and Tevin Coleman. Iowa State's produced the likes of David Montgomery, Breece Hall. And we know what Minnesota did last year with 4 different guys: Mo Ibrahim, Kai Thomas, Trey Potts, and Marquise Irving. So to me, you can look at all the highlight tape film you want to look at. You're not going to be an expert. But to me, this is a good sign when you have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 schools that in recent time have been good examples of identifying running back talent, and certainly developing is part of it, but identifying that talent at high school.
And excluding possibly those 2 Indiana backs, because I think that they were highly recruited. Those other guys were none of them highly recruited, like 3-star guys. All of them.
Yeah, Breece Hall, I think he was maybe fringe 4, but you're right. I mean, I know Iowa was in on Breece Hall's reason I bring that up. And I really don't. You'd know better than I would about Mo Ibrahim and those guys.
Dillon, no.
Yeah.
And the Minnesota backs, no.
And Dillon, Howard, Coleman, Montgomery, they've all had success at the NFL level. Breece Hall's going to. So, I mean, yeah, development is part of it. But you have to be able to identify talent and potential. And that's what those schools have done as well. Seems like Iowa's in line with those schools. It's easy to just copycat schools, Mark. It's easy just to say, well, I'm going to go after whoever Iowa State's going after in the backfield. Well, are you going to actually land kids? The fact that they were able to land Raphael, that's what's positive. You can offer all the kids you want, but they were able to land this guy. So reason for optimism there.
Folks, these are the waning weeks of the off season. Basically, when you think about it, looking at about 5 to 6 weeks from now, it'll be Big Ten Media Days right into August camp, and then we're off and running, and there's no looking back at that point. So please be here each and every Tuesday, 4:30 Central, Iowa Hawkeyes Live. Get on over to Corey's platform, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, to check out his latest work on Iowa football primarily, but basketball, baseball, anything else that comes up that needs to be addressed. And, of course, hit the like button as well. Corey,
Mark, I just want to say, we had, before you move on, we had a change in schedule. I know we don't have a guest for the show today. We were initially going to look at Illinois, but because of this big recruiting news, I think it worked out because we can kind of focus on that. But next week, I do have a Illini media member that just got back to me that would like to come on next week. So maybe we can hit 2 teams in 1 week next week. We can figure that out off the air, but we'll preview the Illini next week if that works for you. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Does this mean we don't get to enjoy your rant?
Oh, here's my rant.
I'll say this before you start off on the rant.
Sure.
If everyone's keeping track, and for those of you that watch our other shows, my approach to the offseason was to have a media member for all the opponents on every team's schedule for the various shows that we do, including here at Iowa. To Corey's credit, and just by sheer luck, this is the only show that through the first 5 opponents on the schedule for 2022, we've been able to bring on an opponent's media contributor for 5 consecutive weeks in order of the schedule until this week.
Here's what I'll say. Okay, now you're setting me up for the rant.
I am.
Listen, this was not the initial scheduling problem was no one's fault. Okay. I understand it's hard to schedule people for a show like this last minute. Well, we had kind of a miscommunication scheduling problem. So I attempted to get somebody on that can represent Illinois. And this is let me just illustrate this for you. I sent a message. I reached out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different media people through Twitter. I got one response, and I'm very thankful to the individual that responded. He's going to be, I think, coming on next week. One person responded out of all those messages. All right. This is the other thing that really does frustrate me, Mark. And this isn't just with sports and this line of work, but it's in my other line of work that I do on a daily basis, and that's cover local news here in the area. And I understand people get busy, and it's not everybody. There are a lot of great people out there that are transparent, are willing to call you right back, and even at times answer phone calls. But I am so frustrated, Mark, with people in this day and age that do not answer their phones. And we're not talking about cell phones. We're talking about work phones, Mark. I cannot tell you how many people, and again, I'm not going to name names, but how many people, and I'll just say this. I have no problem saying this. I called the Illinois Athletic Department. I called like 5 different numbers to get in touch with somebody in communications. I couldn't get in touch with one, not even a secretary, Mark. I mean, I couldn't even there was no point in leaving a message. You know, you're not going to get a call back in the next couple of hours. You may never get a call back. I'm frustrated by that. Now, that's the day and age we live in, but it's so frustrating. It used to be, I mean, just a few years ago, back when I was doing news and sports on AM/FM radio, I don't remember that being a problem. People answered their phones. I just think, and maybe it's the increase in spam, calls, but these are work lines. Maybe just nobody's in the office. Maybe that's possible. You think somebody's there, right? Somebody's got to be there at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I digress.
Although this would be the time of year, if there wasn't going to be somebody in the office in a college sports department, this would be the time of year, the middle of June.
To some extent, but you're telling me that nobody's in there
well, I'm just saying if there would be a time that nobody would be there.
Okay. Well, and let me just say this. I want to reiterate this. My day job covering news, there are a lot of people that are very easy to get a hold of. Super easy. So, but you still run into people. My point in bringing that up is because it's not just with sports. You run into these people in every aspect of daily life. I called a local pharmacy to check in on a prescription before the show. I had to hang up. I couldn't get in touch with them. Now, a lot of these businesses are going to say, well, we don't have enough staff. And maybe that's the case. Maybe, during the last 2 years, when you call someone, you couldn't get an answer, or you're on hold for an hour. It's, well, due to COVID-19. And now it's, now due to staff shortages. And I know that's a problem, but you got to admit it is frustrating from the consumer standpoint. Correct, Mark?
Well, Mike 3883 is commenting that Mark is smiling because he knows Corey's pain. I know Corey's pain from years past when, like Corey being in the news business, I needed to be in contact with people. I needed information. I needed perspective on things. With what I'm doing right now, so Corey, he's showing you his news diligence, his tenacity, going after 7 people. I basically Illinois 24. Yeah. I basically do this. Illinois 247, Illinois rivals, boom, boom, 2 names. If they don't respond, bye, see ya. So, with what I do, if nobody responds or nobody wants to come on, then that just means I talk more. So fortunately, I don't need anyone in this position anymore.
Well, yes. And I did reach out to 7 people, and I called, probably in addition to those 7 people, I called 5 different numbers for Illinois and their athletics communications office, and got one response. And applaud the young man that is going to be coming on, I think, with us next week. So I don't want to announce that yet because I want to iron out the details. I mean, he just messaged me back. Let me just say this, Mark. We're 40 minutes. We've got 20 minutes left in the show. Let me just say this. Next Monday, and I'm going to start promoting this, okay? Got 47 people on here. People will want to tune in to my channel next Monday evening at 8 p.m. All right? I know you do live call-in shows on Mondays, Mark, so I hope I'm not taking any viewers away from you.
I might not be.
By the way, I enjoyed your show last night. That was riveting television. I had it casted on the big screen. All right? It was on the big screen, and it was riveting television. I enjoyed it.
That's funny that you say that because I disclaimed several times, this is not worth watching. This is the most boring. I'm tweeting people the entire time, but I thought, this is the way to do it. This is, we're going to just create YouTube traffic is what we're going to do. If you missed it last night on the main channel, we've had tons of suggestions on what type of guests we should have and specific guests we should have on the call-in show and on the main channel. So I thought, you know what? There's a number of these people that I can reach out to and they'll respond. And I probably have a 98% success rate of bringing on people. But when you start to go to the tier of a Kirk Herbstreit or a Joel Klatt, they're not going to respond. Okay, what's going to possibly get a response is I send out a tweet and you get 50 replies and 50 likes, and you just bother them on Twitter with a number of people. So basically, you folks will get those kind of guests on the show. I won't be able to do it. So that's what Corey's responding to. So
you did see my request, right? Besides Big Game Boomer, I said Barry Alvarez.
Why would you request Big Game Boomer? We already have him on, and he's already been on my show. Like the point of that was not for me to bring on people that I can already get.
I understand.
Okay.
It's just, listen, that's an indication of my level of excitement to talk with Big Game Boomer. But I know specifically Barry Alvarez and who else did I? Bob Bowlesby. Bob Bowlesby.
I did not see. Okay.
Those two guys, I think that'd be great. Now I don't know those are older guys. I don't know if they're real active on Twitter, but those are my suggestions. But you had some great ones, by the way. I saw you reached out to Kenneth brings up Mark May. Man, if you could get Lou Holtz on, then wouldn't that be amazing? So again,
we have had on Jerry DiNardo maybe 3 times. So I was able to text. I texted him directly, but got no
Jerry
response.
DiNardo. Yeah, he's fantastic. I'd love to have him on the Iowa show to talk Iowa football. But what were we talking about?
Let's go back to next Monday.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for mine steers different direction. So next Monday at 9 Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Time. All right. Live for about an hour on Hawkeye Hangout on my channel. There it is on the screen, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We will have the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Rasiopi, private instructor for Spencer Petras, Nate Stanley, Marco Linez. We will have him on the show. We will be taking chats, taking your questions. I think Iowa fans are really going to enjoy that. There has been plenty of criticism heaped upon Spencer Petras, as you well know. There has been criticism heaped upon Tony Rasiopi. So he is going to face the people, face the fans, and answer some questions. And so I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun show. And he's excited to come on. Tony, I think Tony's Italian. He's a real energetic guy. So he should be a great interview. I had a long conversation with him yesterday, and he should give us some good insight on Spencer Petras' progression. In case anybody doesn't know this, he was the private instructor for Kenny Pickett. I'm assuming he still is. He also instructs Art Sikowski. As I mentioned, Nate Stanley, now that he's on the Vikings practice squad, etc. So that will be a fun interview. I do request that everybody, we're not going to be taking, let me just say that we're not going to be taking calls. All right. I had a idea that maybe we should take calls, but I don't know that that's a great idea. Just given that I told Tony, I told Tony that I don't know that's a great idea, but we will have the chat open and you're welcome to submit questions. So next Monday, I should have made a banner, but next Monday, 8 p.m. Central Time, From the Hawkeye of the Storm with Tony Rasiopi.
Corey, if you had the time, which you don't, and if I had the money to pay you, I would pay you to go find guests for my shows.
Hey, there you go.
Because you have a talent for that.
I enjoy finding people that are smarter than I am. So that's kind of I've tried to make that the foundation of my show always, even going back into my high school years. We're talking, I'm 26 years old now, so we're talking 11 years ago when I think was it 11 years ago? My gosh, it can't be that long ago that I started doing podcasting kind of casually. But I remember talking to Darrell Johnson-Koulianos and Kevonte Martin-Manley and these guys because, anybody can just listen to me talk. Now, you, Mark, you're an insightful listen, and I'm not saying that any person that doesn't have guests. I mean, you utilize guests more than anybody, so let's just establish that. But I appreciate people who understand the sport, understand Iowa football better than I do, especially quarterback play. Like, you learn so much. Everybody thinks, I've had people call in during last year's post-game shows with Don Patterson. Oh, I learned so much from you guys. And I'm thinking, you mean Don? Because I learn a lot from Don when I'm on the show, and I enjoy that. So it's not just the fan that's listening that enjoys and learns. It's myself as well.
Mike is stating here, you know what, Mark? I think now a guy like Clatter Herbstreit would come on the show. This is where it's at right now. This show has more street cred than any other TV show. Well,
I agree.
I appreciate that comment talking about this specific show. And I believe, Mike, since you're on our other shows, that you're talking about the various shows that we do. And we do get that feedback from time to time. But let's understand, look at the sheer numbers. We're still, long ways to go to get. There's credibility. To me, there's credibility. There's real credibility based on ability to do the job, skill level. Then there is perceived credibility, which is based on numbers, based on attention.
Exactly.
So we're working on that. We're working on both, but we are working certainly on that part of it.
And let's just make this clear too. I would take that job up with you wholeheartedly, Mark. I would find the time in my day if that were cost effective for you and for me. If you were making $800,000 a year, Mark, and you could afford to pay me, I don't know, $60,000 of that a year to just book guests, I would be on it for you. So if anybody's willing to make that type of a yearly annual donation, I believe you have your Cash App and your Venmo and everything in the description below, correct? Do they accept donations that high?
I'm kind of thinking that they don't.
Okay. Well, we'll parcel it out over a period of time. So.
We had an interesting run of requests the other day during one of the shows where, as you well know, people are fascinated and obsessed with the placement of the helmets. So I got extremely irritated at some point and said, you know what? I don't want anybody telling me what helmets to move or which ones they don't like or like. I said for about 3, you know what I'm going to do? I'm clearing off the helmets. No helmets. I'm going to clear them off the shelves. You're not going to see them for like 3 months because I don't want to hear it from anyone. Well, people started to pony up with money to the extent that somebody wanted me to move a Miami helmet for $50. They wanted it moved. So I said, I can be bought. Yeah. And then our guy, Uncle Rico, said, well, how much money would you take, Mark, to throw away the Michigan helmet? I want to see the Michigan helmet go in the trash. In my response, and this comes to mind because you mentioned a salary, I said for $50 for just the sheer enjoyment of the spectacle of seeing a Michigan helmet go in the trash, I will take $50. I'll bring out a trash can. I will throw it in the trash, but as soon as the show's over, I'm taking it out of the trash and putting it back on the shelf. I said, and then Uncle Rico responded by saying, "What would it take to permanently dispose of the Michigan helmet?" I said, "Well, we are going with a minimum salary of $200,000 a year because Michigan is a prominent team on might be the most prominent, biggest, largest fan base on my main channel. Typically does the best numbers. So I said, at a minimum of $200,000. And if you wanted that gone for like 5 years, you would have to pay me $1 million to dispose of the Michigan helmet." So That was the going rate.
I think we may never see you again if that type of a donation came in, Mark. It'd be like, first, you remember
me again? I can't live on that.
$1 million?
Well, yeah, I still
you can't live on
this.
$1 million. You got to stop buying them Rolexes and driving them Porsches, Mark.
Not for a long time. I can for several years, but that's $1 million is not going to retire me. No.
Well, here's what I'll do. It. You remember what I told you last year? I don't know why we got discussing this, but if I were to die, all right, or one of us were to die, how would the other person find out about it? Because you would probably there would be no way to find out. You would not know. I mean, unless I guess maybe somebody published some sort of a eulogy on Twitter. You found out that way. But, you and I have never met in person. We need to establish that. So it's not, you're across, you live completely across the country. So I guess the same thing for you. If you decided, hey, I'm done, I'm just going to shut down the channel, one day it would be gone. And okay, I guess Mark decided it's over. So
we do have phone numbers. We do have phone contact.
True. But if you decide not to answer your phone, I mean, nothing I can do about it.
I think I would notify you and other people if I.
Let me just say this too.
Yes,
you're right. Yeah, I think you would know your show better than I do. There's a good contingent of Iowa fans that follow you on the main show as well. Correct? I see Lemansky there quite a bit. I see Erica. Trying to think of other people that I've noticed on your main channel. Am I correct in saying that though? There's a decent number of Iowa fans.
Well, I'm going through the process right now where I'm wanting people to let me know who they root for because I would like to come up with some kind of accurate count. It's not going to be accurate because I'd have to have 34,000 people respond. But yes, I really can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, I know you got a guy down in Des Moines that calls in who's not an Iowa fan.
Alabama.
And I've heard him. Yeah, I've heard him call in, and he's always got some interesting things to say about Iowa and Alabama. So you got people, at least from the state.
Erica, Mark, how about that meetup idea of mine? Erica, what was that meetup idea? Something about we determined that I have roots in Ohio, and then there were a number of people in Ohio that said that we could meet up sometime. That's the one I remember hearing about.
I saw that John Rothstein. He does. You may not know who that is, but he's a big college basketball reporter.
Okay. Yeah.
He's probably the biggest college basketball guy on Twitter. Anyways, he made some deal with Northwestern fans. I think he guaranteed they'd make the tournament. They didn't. So because they didn't, he met them all at a bar in downtown Chicago. It was kind of a cool scene. That would actually be kind of a cool project. You could live stream it, and I don't know how profitable it would be, Mark, but
we could all meet at the Big Ten Championship this year.
There you go.
In Indianapolis.
There you go. That would be heck, you could go to media days, Mark. You thought about going to Big Ten media days? You don't have any interest in that anymore, do you?
Well, I've got too many media days going on at the same time. Sure. That's the issue.
Right. Yeah,
I went, the American Conference was only about 2 hours away for about 4 years. So I went to the American Conference for 3 or 4 years here recently. I used to go to the SEC media days, but that was a long, long time ago. With everything online, there's not as much need for it. It's just kind of show up just to say you've been there. And Mike, we are continuing call-in shows. So regardless of what came out of my mouth, never fear, we're doing call-in shows. Actually, we want to set a summer schedule of call-in shows. But again, this is about Iowa, but we have pretty much reached our time limit here. So we will sign off for this week.
This has been fun, Mark. I'm glad we kind of took today to talk about Iowa's 23 class. I know we didn't really break down the whole class. I guess before we jump off, Mark, let me just establish this. So Iowa's got right now, according to 247, just one 4-star recruit. That needs to be known, and that is Kendrick Raphael. Linez would be the next highest rated recruit, in my opinion, as far as 3 stars are concerned. Alex Moda is close, and then they've got a plethora of other 3-star kids. But Iowa doing pretty well in the 2003 class, with 16 overall commits, 1 running back, 1 quarterback, a number of athletes from the state of Iowa, as we've talked about. And so they'll still be targeting a tight end. I'm guessing priority is still tight end, receiver, although I don't know how much of a priority receiver. I'm sure they want to get at least one more guy in that class. They got time. Everybody recruits earlier than ever now. But the Kendrick Raphael, I'm glad we took some time to talk about it, because kudos to Liddell Betts, Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz. I'm sure he was involved with it as well. I got to give credit where credit's due. Those guys are recruiting well right now at that position.
Erica, you are memorable, not forgettable. So please understand that I've had a number of people make similar suggestions. So I'm not good at keeping track of those sorts of comments from the past. So my apologies there. And everyone, we've got a pretty good crew in here, not in regards to numbers necessarily, but a lot of dedicated viewers. So please bring some folks with you. We want to build this show in particular, the channel overall, and of course from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So it's Tuesday every week at 4:30 Central. So please come on back as we get everybody set up for the 22 season. All right, Corey. Have a great night.
Appreciate it, Mark. We'll see you next Tuesday.